Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything. Geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Porkins Policy Radio. As always, I am your host, Pierce Redmond, and you can find this show here at American Freedom Radio, AmericanFreedomRadio.com, as well as on my website, PorkinsPolicyReview.com, and on a host of other internet radio stations later in the week. So check out all of those places if you want to hear the show. And before we get started, I just want to say thank you to Janice, who just became a subscriber on Patreon to the radio show. Thank you so much, Janice, and thank you to everybody who has continued to sign up. And it's just been wonderful getting so many different people all wanting to help out on the show. And, of course, if you want to help out, you can also donate to American Freedom Radio. And, of course, you can find all of that on the website. Well, today we are joined by someone who I loved the first time he was on the show, and that is, of course, Jeffrey Augustine, who is the host of Surviving Scientology Radio and is also the author of the great blog and website, the Scientology Money Project. Jeffrey, how are you?
Great, Pierce. A pleasure to be on your show.
Great. No, I'm so glad to have you back on. Everybody loved you the last time on, and of course there were just so many different little avenues and stuff that we wanted to discuss that we couldn't get to. So hopefully we'll be able to get to at least to some of those on this week's episode. But something that Jeffrey and I had talked about, when we finished recording, this is, I guess, almost like a month ago, we wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the actual intake process. Because I think a lot of people out there are obviously familiar with Scientology as this organization, this cult, and they know the kind of stuff that you see on like South Park. So they know like about Xenu, and they know about the concept of Thetans exist and all of that. But there's a lot more to that, and I think the actual intake process, how someone becomes a member, is not really all that understood by most people. And so Jeffrey and I thought we could kind of get into that. So Jeffrey, why don't you kind of explain a little bit how does it happen? For people, I think people will be kind of familiar, at least like here in New York and like in the train station, like at 42nd Street, there used to be a whole giant, setup of folding tables with people with e-meters, and they were giving personality tests, and you could buy a book, a copy of Dianetics and things. But how does it happen for a lot of people? How are they sort of first introduced to Scientology?
Well, Pierce, those are several good questions. What you're referring to, Scientologists who work on the public streets, as they do here in Los Angeles, New York, other cities, are called body routers. It's kind of a creepy word, but the term literally means they want to route your body physically into a Scientology org. Scientology doesn't call its churches, they call them orgs, which is short for organizations. And what people should know is that Scientology has a very well-designed method for ensnaring people. And that means legally. So the first question when I started the Scientology Money Project I wanted to explore is, what is a Scientologist? And that comes out of my background in corporate sales, because when I would sell to a client, let's say I sold to Boeing, Raytheon, big clients, your question would be, how do they do business? How do I do business with you? How do I become a vendor, right? So there's always an intake process. How do you get into radio? So how do you become a Scientologist? And I found it to be pretty Byzantine and full of contracts. And to give your listeners some history, L. Ron Hubbard had legal problems with the FDA and the U.S. government, back in the 50s and 60s. The government raided him in 1962, seized e-meters, and people were always wanting to sue Hubbard. So in the early 60s, Hubbard discovered that, he could get people to sign waivers to give up their rights, their legal rights to sue Scientology. And that's kind of the first thing Hubbard did after getting religious status, 501c3 religious tax exemption. So the first element of the Scientology trap is 501c3 religious status, because the First Amendment, forbids the government to make laws respecting the establishment of religion, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the baseline, religious protection. And that's why my highest goal is to get Scientology's tax exemption revoked. And that's, I think, that Alex Gibney called for that in the movie Going Clear, the revocation of tax exemption, because that ends a lot of the human rights abuses. That's Scientology's first line of defense. Why is it so important? It's not just that you get tax exempt income. That's only part of it. In America, and this is something the public at large probably doesn't realize, especially perhaps the atheist community, who focus on beliefs and, rationality, and they look at the illogical nature of religious beliefs. They're missing the point to a certain extent. The U.S. Constitution allows people to be religious. And the key part of that is when people become religious, they consent to be governed by the rules and laws of their religion. And that puts the church behind the protection of the Constitution so they can do what they want to their members. And that's really subtle but important to understand. So Hubbard began his program by getting First Amendment religious protection, and then getting you, the new Scientologist. One of the first things you do is to sign away your legal rights to sue the church. And that's really important. And this got modified over time, Pierce, into 4 unconscionable contracts. Unconscionable means that all the power is on the side of the church, and you have none of the power as a new Scientologist. So let's go back to the streets of Los Angeles or New York or anywhere else. The Scientology body router, he or she will try to get you into the org to watch a film. This film is called Orientation, and it's been leaked on YouTube before. It's the one where the former Scientology actor Larry Anderson says that if you walk away from Scientology, you can also blow your brains out or jump off a bridge. Do you recall that film?
Yeah.
It gets pulled down from YouTube. The church doesn't like it seen. So the church wants you to see this film that's an introduction to Scientology. It's called Orientation. When you see that film, they ask you to sign a contract, and it's called Attestation of Religious Belief regarding the Scientology religious film called Orientation. And basically, you agree in this contract that you've seen the film, and as a consequence of your own free will and independent thought and judgment, you agree that Scientology is a religion. So you've agreed or consented to the fact that Scientology is a religion. Now that's important because you've consented to something. You've agreed that it's a religion. And that's the first step in becoming a Scientologist, is you must agree that it's a religion. And you agree also that Scientology has distinctive teachings and trademarks, and that all of the churches of Scientology are legally separate. Scientology is kind of a franchise system. It's not a monolithic thing. It's all a series of legally separate corporations, and we'll get to why that's important later on. Okay, so you've seen the film. You said, I'm interested. I'll get some auditing. So you sign the Orientation. Now, the second contract you sign before you can do any service in the Church of Scientology is called Religious Services Enrollment Application, Agreement, and General Release. And what does that mean? Well, it memorializes what they say: you're freely given consent to be bound exclusively by the discipline of faith, internal organization, ecclesiastical rules, customs, and laws of Scientology. So you're agreeing to be governed by Scientology. You're giving them their consent. This is really scary because they can begin to do things to you behind the First Amendment and your own consent. So you can see you're surrendering your power to the Church of Scientology. And this happens in other churches, but Scientology is so sinister because they're so abusive, toward their own members.
Mm.
So that's the second step. Now, in this same contract, here's the quote, you agree to the abandonment, surrender, waiver, and relinquishment of your rights. That means you're not going to sue the church. You're not going to seek legal recourse. You agree to binding arbitration. And you recognize that they have First Amendment protections. So basically, if anything goes wrong, if you're conned, lied to, tricked, deceived, or even driven insane, you agree to submit to binding arbitration. And this is interesting because binding arbitration has become very much the trend in things like cell phone contracts, consumer contracts. So they're going to keep everything in-house. And that inherently puts you at a disadvantage. But
Jeffrey, just to jump in real quick, are people fully aware when they're signing this? Is it, are they, obviously a body router or somebody like that, are they telling them that this is what you're signing, or is it sort of like, just sign this and then we're going to work on, why you're feeling depressed or something?
It's the latter. It's just, this is some paperwork, sign it. And I've extensively interviewed people about the intake process, and the general consensus is, yes, I signed some contracts. No, I didn't read them. And I didn't even get copies of them. So there's no truly informed consent. They don't, like if you go in for a medical procedure, the doctor, he or she will go over what the medical procedure is and you initial things. They'll tell you about the risks, correct?
Yes.
Scientology, they don't do that. They don't say, hey, here's some contracts. Maybe you should take them to a lawyer and have them looked at. That would be the fair thing to do, or at least say, look, here is what this really means to you, and we're going to give you copies of these contracts. Other churches do that with their membership contracts. They tell you what it means to be a member of this fellowship. Scientology doesn't. It's like, sign this. And very often when people are emotionally vulnerable and they feel like they need Scientology's help, they'll sign anything. Because Scientology, those body routers, when they get you in, they'll get you in with a reg who wants to find your ruin, what's really bothering you. So if someone's emotionally upset and Scientology says, yes, we can help you with that, well, they're not going to read and sign these things. And so that's the general answer, is no, they don't really read the fine print. But Pierce, when you signed up for your cell phone, did you go through the contract?
Well, that's exactly what I was just thinking in my head, or how many times do people accept iTunes, updates or anything, or any kind of computer program you install, nobody reads through that. And who really knows what's in some of the cell phone contracts? Because no one is really going through it.
No, but Pierce, the difference is, if I sign a cell phone contract and something doesn't go right, I might be out some money, but I'm not going to get fair gamed by by Verizon or Sprint.
Right.
So it's like, we're talking apples and oranges. Yes, these contracts are all one-sided, but you're not going to get hurt on a bad cell phone contract. Yeah, a couple $100 or something.
Right. You won't be framed for, murder or something, or
yeah. Okay, so now the next thing, in Scientology, everything you do is recorded. So when you get auditing, you're in a room with the auditor and it's being videotaped, it's being recorded, and the auditor is making notes. Now you agree to have all of this recorded. And there's another contract, the third contract is called the Agreement Regarding Confidential Religious Files. When you're in the Church of Scientology, you get audited up through the bridge to total freedom. That means a series of steps going from, the purification rundown all the way up to OT8. So every step of the way they keep a log of your spiritual progress, what they call spiritual progress, in your auditing sessions. So let's say in your auditing sessions you're talking about your sexuality, your marriage, your finances. Questions could be, Pierce, what have you done that you don't want others to know about? And you would give up what's called your withhold. You would say, well, whatever, right? Some people might say, well, I embezzled money from my employer. And this is, confession is good for the soul. You have to get off your withholds, as they call it. Now, the Church of Scientology is writing all of this down. It's on videotape. You're giving up all these secrets, but you've agreed to let them do it. And worse, you've given up all your right to ever see what are called your pre-clear folders. So all these documents they're compiling on you in your pre-clear folders, you'll never get to see. You legally sign away your right to own them. You agree that your heirs, agents, or assigns can never get them in perpetuity. And so you're kind of screwed that way. Even though you're paying sometimes up to $1,000 an hour for the, top-level auditing, $300 to $1,000 an hour for auditing, you don't ever get to see your own folders. And they own them. So right there, you don't have any power because you can't like subpoena them. And if you were to get to a lawsuit, you don't get them back. Now, in the Dyckman case, Laura Dyckman was able to get hers back. She showed that, dozens of people have access to these folders. There's not the, security of these folders that they like to talk about. Priest-penitent privilege in Scientology is, it doesn't really exist. The purpose of this is to give the church power, but also if you ever leave the church, and we know many documented instances where the church has used confidential parishioner information against members who've left and spoken out. And that's one reason Scientology is sinister. They know your secrets and they'll use them against you if you leave and speak up. But nevertheless, they do own your folders. Okay. The next contract you sign, and this is really bizarre, Pierce. If I handed you a contract that said, Pierce, if I think you're insane, I have the right to kidnap you and lock you up in a hotel room until I think you're better on an indefinite basis, would you sign it?
Right, yeah.
No, you wouldn't.
No.
But Scientology has what I call the kidnap contract, and it's called the Agreement and General Assistance Regarding Spiritual Assistance. Basically, Scientology's psychomechanical processes can be very intrusive, upsetting, disturbing, because they're kind of taking apart your mind. Because it's an intense introspection of, what's bothering you, your demons, your past misdeeds, and it can be very upsetting. So if you flip out, they call it type 3. You have a psychotic break. So if you really flip out, they don't want you out on the streets babbling about how Scientology, screwed up your mind. And this has happened. That's why they have you sign this contract. You agree to allow them to lock you up in a process called the introspection rundown. And this most notoriously happened with the late Scientologist Lisa McPherson. She was a Scientologist. She gets in a minor traffic accident in Clearwater, Florida, gets out of the car, starts undressing, stripping in the middle of the street, and the paramedics roll up, and she says, I need help. They put her in Morton Plant Hospital under psychiatric evaluation. Scientology uses this type of contract to come and pull her out of the church, because in this contract you say, if I'm ever locked up for psychiatric observation, in California we'd call it a 5150, it's a 72-hour. You say, I don't want it. I expect my church to come and pull me out of that and put me in the introspection rundown. So this is basically burning your bridge for any psychiatric help, because Scientology hates psychiatric assistance or help in any form whatsoever. So they'll take you and lock you up somewhere on a It could be called a babysitting house, it could be a church premise, but whatever. And they leave you in there 24 hours a day. You don't get to talk. They pass notes under the door. You have a minder, but you agree to that.
Won't speak to you.
Yes. And L. Ron Hubbard wrote about it. He set an example. He believed that if you flipped out because of Scientology, you should not be spoken to. You should have minimum communication so you can calm down. And so he suggested passing notes under the door in his policy. And I would pass you a note if I had you locked up, and it would say, Terrace, what can you promise me if I let you out?
Yeah.
You realize,
and this is also partly because if you're losing it, quote, because of Scientology, in a lot of cases, this means that you've done something wrong against Scientology, right? That there's some sort of transgression that you're not revealing that might be causing it. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that can be correct. Normally in Scientology, anything good that happens is because of Scientology and its technology. Anything bad that happens is because of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to give you an analogy to show how this goes on in religion in general. When I was growing up in the Christian church as a young man, anything good that happened was because of God. So let's say, let's say something very positive happened. I get a new car, right? God has blessed me. But on the other hand, let's say I get in trouble and I get in a car crash. Well, that's because I have what's called unconfessed sin. My heart's not right with God. So this is an old religious pattern. Look, religion's been doing this forever, right? Anything good is us, everything bad is you. In Scientology, if you have overts and withholds, if you have crimes against Scientology, you'll pull in bad things. You'll cause it to happen. So if you flip out, it's because you have some withhold or some overt or some crime. So yes, it's all your fault. And you have to pay Scientology to fix it because these introspection rundowns aren't free. You got to remember everything in Scientology. It's like when you go to a nice hotel, they charge for everything. Or at a hospital stay, they charge for everything.
Sure.
Scientology is like that. They itemize everything. So not only do you get locked up in the introspection rundown for some undetermined amount of time, but you're paying for it. And then when they feel that you've come out of it, they'll let you out of the introspection rundown. But you've contractually agreed to it. So your non-Scientology family has no way of getting you out because you're behind the First Amendment and you're behind a contract where you've consented to this treatment. And, it's quite something. So those are the 4 basic contracts, and you can find them on the Scientology Money Project. I did an article on Tony Ortega's blog called How Scientology Ensnares the Unsuspecting in a Series of Binding Contracts. So you can find it there as well. So that's the basic overview, is that you have no rights and they have all rights. You have no power, they have all the power.
And let's also be clear again, we're talking about you've just been recruited off the street, right? You've now seen the Scientology movie, maybe you've spoken with an auditor for, 30 minutes or something. Now you want to join, and you've now signed 4 contracts, which essentially give Scientology complete control over your life. And you've more or less done this willingly. And that's definitely how they will phrase it if you were to ever try and sue them or something happens. And this is, all before you've really even become like a true member. This is probably before you've really read Dianetics or understood the concepts or really done auditing and stuff. So I think that's another aspect I always find interesting with Scientology, as when you compare it to other cults or control groups, is that they really get you right, from the pretty much the first moment, they've gained complete control over you. Whereas with other groups, it builds up a little bit.
Sure. Scientology, like I said, it has an intake system it really doesn't want the public to know about. And so you're correct. If you have an interest, and you may not sign all 4 contracts in one day. You maybe over a week or whatever, but you do have to agree that they're a religion. Now, in Scientology, they have what are called legal rudiments. They never have regular words often. So legal rudiments simply means we have a legal program that we as Scientologists have to follow and to let you be a member. So to keep their legal rudiments in, these are very important. And that's why before you can receive any services or courses or auditing, let's move on. You sign the 4 basic contracts, okay? Before you can really get any auditing or services, you have to sign a contract for each service. So let's take Los Angeles as an example. The Church of Scientology of Los Angeles, if you wanted to get life repair, which is like a beginning level auditing to handle upsets, early in life, that's like a basic thing, you would buy 12.5 hour intensives of auditing. So the case supervisor may say, Pierce, you've been through some rough patches in life. You need 5 intensives of life repair. So that's 5 blocks of auditing at 12.5 hours apiece. Let's say it's low level auditing at $400 an hour. And, well, let's crunch the numbers because this is really how Scientology is done. This is the part like when you buy a car and you're sitting in, the finance guy's office and they're crunching the numbers for your car and the price on the lot is quite different than when you get in the office, right?
Yeah.
So 12.5 times 5 would be 62.5 hours at $400 an hour, and that would be $25,000. So, right off the bat, we went $25,000 just to get you on the, just to get you ready for the bridge.
Right.
Okay. Now, before you can do that, there's another thing, by the way, you have to do, Pierce. The Church of Scientology, that term, the Church of Scientology, they told the IRS there's no such thing as the Church of Scientology. Now, what does that mean in a legal sense? The Church of Scientology, they said, is a term of convenience that's used to refer to all of the churches of Scientology in the Scientology ecclesiastical hierarchy. Now, that's a mumble jumble of words. What it basically means is Scientology is a franchise system. Okay? And so all the churches are franchised or licensed from the Religious Technology Center, Church of Scientology International, in turn licenses the Church of Scientology Los Angeles, Church of Scientology New York, okay? So you're going to get auditing in one particular corporate church that's legally separate from all the rest of Scientology. Now let's go to the other side. You sign the 4 contracts, but let's back up a step because we're going to run a parallel course, okay? The Church of Scientology does not have any members. It's a non-membership corporation. So who do Scientologists actually belong to? Where do they get their standing to take services in this Church of Scientology? The Church of Scientology has a membership organization called the International Association of Scientologists. So you actually have to join their membership organization. And that gives you standing to sign these contracts to become a Scientologist. So the membership is not part of the church itself. So you join the International Association of Scientologists. Now, on the other side, you're going to have auditing delivered to you by Sea Org members. And the Sea Org doesn't actually exist. The Sea Org, it doesn't exist legally, I should say. The Sea Org is a pledge. And I think we talked about this on the last show.
A little bit, yeah.
The Sea Org billion-year contract is simply a pledge. And it'd be like accepting Jesus into your heart as your personal savior.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you sign the billion-year contract, it's like accepting Jesus. It's a pledge or a vow you make, but it doesn't have any legal standing. So you couldn't go in and buy property saying, I've accepted Jesus or I'm a Sea Org member. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a pledge. So Sea Org members sign contracts to become staff members of individual Scientology churches. And you can start seeing how the church is really legally separate. Everyone's separate from everyone else. So you, as a member of the International Association of Scientologists, have signed a membership contract. And then you've signed these contracts with the Church of Scientology, which is a different organization from the IAS. Can you follow that?
Right.
Okay. Now, once you agree to pay $25,000 as an IAS member, you go into a building owned by a Scientology corporation, and the Sea Org is really the slave labor pool of the church. They deliver the auditing.
Mm-hmm.
And so you as an IAS member go into a church that's owned by a Scientology corporation that's licensed from the Religious Technology Center, so it's able to deliver it. Then a Sea Org member comes in and delivers you the auditing. And they've signed all the same contracts. And you two meet in a building that's owned by a corporation of which neither of you are members. You get your services, pay your money, and leave. And all the money moves upstairs to the Church of Scientology International Religious Technology Center and Church of Spiritual Technology. And that's why I say it's a franchise. And, it's sort of, if anything goes wrong, the Church of Scientology limits its damages, so you can only sue for one service you had in one church. You can't sue the big church. And by way of background, the original Church of Scientology was called the Church of Scientology of California, and it owned all of the copyrights, trademarks, intellectual property, real estate, everything. And the Lawrence Wollersheim lawsuit was so devastating that the Church of Scientology realized it could lose everything if it lost Wollersheim. I mean, they were wide open. That's why they reformulated the corporation into a series of endless corporations. So that if, you actually did win a lawsuit, if you got through arbitration or whatever, and you win a lawsuit, you're only going to get the assets of one Scientology corporation rather than the whole church. And so to become a Scientologist... go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, even going back further to when it was just Dianetics and the way that fell apart. And, you look at a lot of the way that was originally legally set up. Hubbard learned from a lot of that, how not to set up the organization. So, just sort of expanding on that again. And now you see this... it's quite confusing when you start really looking at it, the amount of different, just the mere concept of when you join, you're not I don't think people fully understand the concept that the Church of Scientology doesn't exist. That's more or less just a name that's given for things like RTC and all these other organizations that are sort of underneath it. So yeah, it's
exactly.
and again, this is all a way of, obviously hiding it from any sort of prosecution, be it low, state level, federal, low, city, county, anything like that. But I think also it's a way of, it's a way of confusing its own members, and it's a way of allowing for any sort of wrongdoing that can go on. Well, you can kind of break it down to, well, it was just that franchise. It was just Scientology New York that screwed you. It wasn't us. We had nothing to do with that. And then of course too, and then there's all sorts of, quotas for each of the different, particular organizations around, in every other state, and they have to do stuff. But yeah, and just to keep that in mind for people that are interested in researching Scientology, that it's a lot more, and I think again, this is another thing that separates it from other cults or control groups, is that it's not as centralized as you would think. It really is sort of all spread around, and a lot of these different groups, they don't know what the other one is up to.
Well, let's qualify that, Pierce. You raise a good point. legally speaking, Scientology is highly differentiated between the corporations and spread around. You're correct there. However, on the Sea Org side, the Sea Org gives the church a unity of command. So the Sea Org really does run the church. It really does have a unity of command, but they claim the Sea Org claims to be an unincorporated membership association, a fraternity that has no legal existence. David Miscavige's lawyer in the Rathbun case down in Texas said that the Sea Org has no legal form. That is, it doesn't have a bank account. It doesn't have an address. It can't transact business. It cannot give or receive orders because there's no one to give or receive orders. So there was a court case that I'll give you for your show notes, where basically it's very deceptive. The Sea Org actually runs the church, but they claim that they are just religious volunteers. And Marty Rathbun made a great statement in the Rathbun case. He said the highest-ranking Sea Org member runs the church. And when he was alive, L. Ron Hubbard was the Commodore of the Sea Org and absolutely ran the church. But he tried to create the impression when he resigned as director in 1966 that he had nothing to do with running the church. And, so he ran the church as the managing agent, and the church was his alter ego, and that's what the Willerstein case found. And it's the same thing very much today. The Church of Scientology is ran by the dictator, David Miscavige. As the highest-ranking Sea Org member, he's the captain, David Miscavige. And so that part, too, is hard to understand. Within the church, it's understood that David Miscavige runs it, but legally, if you try to prove it, he'll say that he belongs to the Religious Technology Center, and he's only in charge of ensuring the ecclesiastical purity of the religion, but doesn't have anything to do with the hands-on, day-to-day running of the church. So legally, it's very confusing to sue the church, to even know how to sue the church.
Or who to sue.
And on top of that, it gets worse because the church fights back, by using private investigators, and they try to disqualify lawyers at lawsuits. They harass lawyers. They string out litigation. And so they fight back. Not only is it just legally confusing, but you also have an opponent who has a lot of money and who's going to fight back and try to get summary judgments and things like that. So they're very hostile. They're very hostile in that sense. They're hostile to their own members by these contracts. I'll even make it worse for our listeners to see how bad it is inside the church. There's an obscure document called the Scientology Policy Directive. And these are not things necessarily written by L. Ron Hubbard, but they are written by the Church of Scientology International. Now, there's a Scientology Policy Directive of 13 March 1996, and it's on the Money Project. It's called Statements by Staff Members. And Pierce, you have to sign this before you get the service, like a lot of other documents. I'm just going to read for it. It says, quote, "The church, its board, and its management take no responsibility for statements or claims made by staff members regarding the workability of Dianetic spiritual healing technology or Scientology applied religious philosophy or any claims or promises made to public persons, the public, or to Scientologists. Any promises of cures or results are not authorized and will not be honored by the church, its board of directors, or management," unquote. So you go, wait a minute. You're telling me that Scientology works. They're going to help me handle problems in life. This is what, the Scientology recruiters are telling you, the regs, the salespeople. So they'll promise you the earth, moon, and the sky to get your $25,000 for life repair. But the church legally is saying we don't stand behind any of that. So if you had a problem with women, Scientology, well, if you're shy with women, we can help you with that. If you need help with money, we can help you with that. So Scientology claims to be a meta-religion above all other religions, senior to life, have all the answers, right? Mm-hmm. But they don't stand behind any of their claims. Now, the same document, the Scientology Policy Directive of 13 March 1996, I'll read the second part. Quote, "At no time did L. Ron Hubbard promise people anything or claim anything for Dianetics and Scientology." Unquote. Now, this is really walking back from everything, all of the claims Hubbard made for Scientology. In the Dianetics days, he said, a couple hours of Dianetics, you won't need your eyeglasses anymore.
Right.
Arthritis, asthma, and it goes on and on and on. So legally, though, they're going to walk that back. And in fact, what they say in the Scientology Policy Directive, it's, quote, one of his most common sayings, that's L. Ron Hubbard, is, "What's true for you is real to you." Now listen to this, Pierce, quote, "Others, a vast multitude of fully qualified observers, have found that what was true for them was very real in Dianetics and Scientology. It is they, not Ron, who make the claims for the subjects and who have heralded its breakthroughs," unquote. So look at the bait and switch here, Pierce. The claim is made that Hubbard researched and developed things that others found to be real for them. So what is the church doing? It's shifting the burden for Hubbard's claims from Hubbard and onto the individual. So that's why they make you, when you finish a course as a Scientologist, write a success story. In fact, you must write a success story when you complete a reaction. And again, if you sue, that will come back. They'll throw the success stories in your face. If you don't write a success story, you have to redo the course. You might get sent to ethics. So it's sort of like North Korea happy land. Yes, I was very happy with the interrogation sex check.
Yeah. Well, they'll hound you even if you've just, if they know that you visited a center and you bought a copy of Dianetics. They'll send you letters asking you to just write about what was Dianetics like. It doesn't. You don't even have. You don't even have to take a course necessarily.
No, that's a great point. They're looking. Look, they're a sales organization, so they have to engage people who've shown an interest. And it's really funny on Tony Ortega's blog. I think the record is they wrote to somebody who bought a book in 1968, and just this year they wrote to them. So they'll go into the dead files even. People haven't had any who bought a book a long decades ago, and then, someone in 72 buys a book, and then, I'm not interested. But they'll send them letters, and they'll send them magazines forever. So because it is a sales organization, they need what L. Ron Hubbard so infamously called raw meat. He said, we need raw meat. That means non-Scientologists with money. He also used the term bodies in the shop. We need to get bodies in the shop. And so as a sales organization, they'll always recruit and they'll make all kinds of promises and inducements for you to hand over your money. And even that is misleading, Pierce, because when you're a Scientologist, they'll ask you to put money on account for future services. So if I say money on account, Pierce, you have $25,000 on account, what does that mean to you? I mean, does that sound like a bank account that you can take the money out of if you need to?
Yeah. Well, in theory, right?
Well, yeah, money on account's a tricky term. What it really means is when you put money on account for future services, you sign another piece of paper stating that it is an irrevocable donation, a surrender of money. They don't want to ever give you your money back. They told the IRS in their 1992 filing for tax exemption that they have an easy refund policy, a repayment policy. But in practical application, it doesn't. They will tell you that there's no law in America that forces a religion to return any monies. And just on a bigger issue on the religious tax blogs I keep up on, most churches never want to give back any money at all because it sets a bad precedent. If I give you back your $20,000, then I have to give everyone back who wants it, right?
Sure.
So religious monies are treated as the voluntary and irrevocable surrender of monies. And you sign that when you give Scientology money. And no matter how they told the IRS in practice it's very hard to get even 1 penny back because Scientology plays for keeps. So that's kind of the intake system. You have no rights. You've even agreed that Scientology and Oral and Hubbard have made no promises to you. And the only results is what's true for you. So, where does that leave you? It leaves you paying money, hoping you can continue to finally find Scientology enlightenment. And this is really interesting, Pierce. At the end of every course you do in Scientology, they have training courses. They have bridge levels, so you go grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, clear, and then into the OT levels. Every time you finish a Scientology course, they give you a completion certificate. And people have probably seen these online, Scientologists holding up framed completion certificates.
Yeah.
So they give you a completion certificate. You graduated the course, here's your completion certificate. So let's say you're a clear and you're $150,000 into Scientology. And you've attested that you're clear and you don't have your reactive mind. Now they give you that certificate that you are a clear. However, the corporation of Scientology can determine at its sole discretion that you falsely attested, and they can revoke your enlightenment, your state of clear, or they can make you do the clear certainty run down.
Right.
So, unlike, traditionally enlightenment, spiritual enlightenment has been considered irrevocable. Like if you have
a
high state in Buddhism, that's a state that it changes you permanently, right? There's a massive expansion in your consciousness. You've experienced a state like the Amrita Nadi, Sahaj Samadhi, all these esoteric states. They're yours. But in Scientology, you're actually only as good as your enlightenment is only as good as your standing is in the Church of Scientology. And that's a key term, Pierce. You're an IAS member, remember, as a Scientologist. You have to be in good standing with the Church of Scientology International. That's the actual corporation that runs everything. So you have to be in good standing with the Church of Scientology International to not just do auditing, but to keep your certificates in force, whether you've trained as an auditor or become a clear. And if they catch you reading the Internet and you get declared an SP, they revoke all your certificates. And in fact, they even tell you an SP declares that you cannot call yourself a Scientologist. Why? Because that's a trademark owned by the Religious Technology Center, which is, somewhat absurd, right? Even L. Ron Hubbard is a trademark word owned. So it's sort of a scorched earth. It's stripping you of your power in, and then they strip you of your accomplishments on the way out, declare you as suppressive, and then you're subject to the doctrine of disconnection. Family and friends in the church can't talk to you. You're also subject to fair game if you speak out against the church. So this
of course.
Yeah. It's very much a one-way street.
Which is funny too when you see you'll see the high-ranking members within within Scientology structure. Suddenly they're revoked and they're really evil and all this stuff, and it's funny that's how Scientology will attack them. And as you said, they'll revoke their status as clear or OT, whatever, 7, 8. Yet, somehow apparently they were able to slip past all of these people within Scientology. They were somehow able to attain these very high levels, surrounded by all of these other these are people that are superhumans that, according to the technology, are able to, see past things and superhuman strength and super intellect and all these things. Yet you've all of these SPs around you. Which is it's one of those sort of all or nothing and kind of the crazy contradictions that seem apparent, I think, to people when you're sort of looking in. But even when you're really kind of within the church's hierarchy, you just sort of accept it. It's just sort of normal, and it's just sort of a part of life, and it's just sort of accepted that, oh yeah, my best friend was an SP the whole time. And now I'm going to shun them completely and cut off all ties with them. So it's just, and again, it's another one of these sort of very manipulative tactics that Scientology uses.
Yeah, it's a key aspect of cultic systems, and we raise a fascinating point to talk about. Someone could go up to the level of OT8, which is the highest level. So they're at the pinnacle of the Scientology bridge. They have OT powers, stably exterior with full perceptions, all these claimed benefits. But if they're declared a suppressive person, it raises a few interesting questions that trouble people still in the church. How could they have gone up to OT8 and yet they were a suppressive all along? Well, this begs the question, Scientology must have some deficiency if they didn't spot it earlier. Because if you read Hubbard's characteristics of a suppressive person and you follow how aggressively Scientology sect checks people, then they should have spotted it earlier. But here's the real thing, Pierce. Scientology is going to take in as much money from a person as they can for as long as they can. And Pierce, are you familiar with the the Nigerian 419 scams?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so you get the letter, from Dr. Linus Momo offering you 10% of $35 million if you'll help him get the Trump boxes. Okay. Now, that's called an advanced fee fraud. And there's a case I have made that in one sense, Scientology is an advanced fee fraud. That is, they'll string you along with promises that the next level will crack your case, will be the big breakthrough if you pay. And the essence of the 419 fraud is the con lasts for as long as the victim allows it. And the con man knows that. As long as I can keep, whether it's a romance scam or a 419 scam, as long as the victim's paying, I'll let the con keep going because really the victim's doing it to themselves.
Sure.
So in one sense, Scientology is collecting money and it's going to keep collecting it until the Scientologists realize they've been lied to, that the claimed benefits are not there, or if they were, they're being tricked, by the church in some way, or they've been treated unfairly, or they've been subjected to harsh penalties. But at some point, some Scientologists experience a collapse of their belief system, of their faith in the church, and they leave and they begin to investigate it, and then suddenly they're the enemy, and they're denounced. And in the church, you're really not allowed to talk about it. So let's say if you were a Scientologist and you left, we were very good friends, I really wouldn't talk about you.
Right. Well, it's like you don't exist anymore.
Yeah, you become a non-person. The most prominent non-person in Scientology is Mary Sue Hubbard, the wife of the founder. You can't find her. She doesn't exist. You go search far and wide on Scientology website, she doesn't exist. You also will not find Shelley Miscavige, the wife of David Miscavige. So you do become a non-person, and within the system, yes, you are a suppressive person if you're talked about at all. What was very interesting when Marty Rathbun, the number 2 man in Scientology, left, and Mike Rinder, the number 3 man, left very publicly around 2008, the church tried to denounce them as low-ranking nobodies. And that the church, they had crimes and the church found out and dismissed them for malfeasance or whatever. And these were outright lies. Here's what I did as an internet activist. I went to the Wayback Machine, which is one of our best friends, when you want to go find Scientology. And I posted the pages of Marty Rathbun being lauded as a hero of tax exemption and the number 2 man, Inspector General at Religious Technology Center.
Hold on one sec, Jeffrey. We're coming up on the break, but let's continue this in the second hour with my guest, Jeffrey Augustine.
I like very much radio. You're an American institution. American Freedom Radio.
Did you know there are 3 million edible food plants on Earth, and none have the nutritional value of the hemp plant? HempUSA.org offers you hemp protein powder. It does not contain chemicals or THC, is non-GMO, and is 100% gluten-free. Hemp protein powder burns fat, builds muscle, contains 53% protein, and feeds the body the nutrients it needs. Call 888-910-4367 and see what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you. Only at HempUSA.org. HempUSA.org introduces 3 brand new detox formulations of micro plant powder. Brain fuel for depression, bipolar disorders, and stress. Total Care, anti-cancer agent that cleans the liver and organs and increases memory. Rejuvenate, invigorates and heals the body, mind, and spirit. These products are your alternative to pharmaceuticals. Call 888-910-4367 and like us on Facebook. We ship worldwide. Only at HempUSA.org.
We all know that they're not telling us the truth. So stand up for your rights, demand the real medicine, and your right to use it and grow it. This is Rick Sensen, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the war in the Persian Gulf. You know my favorite part of that war? It's the first war we ever had that was on every channel plus cable. We like war. We're a warlike people. We like war because we're good at it. And you know why we're good at it? Because we get a lot of practice. This country's only 200 years old, and already we've had 10 major wars. We average a major war every 20 years in this country, so we're good at it. And it's a good thing we are. We're not very good at anything else anymore. Huh? Can't build a decent car. Got no steel industry left. Can't educate our young people. Can't get health care to our old people. Now, you probably noticed I don't feel about that war the way we were told we were supposed to feel about that war, the way we were ordered and instructed by the United States government to feel about that war. You see, I tell you, my mind doesn't work that way. I got this real moron thing I do. It's called thinking. And I'm not a very good American because I like to form my own opinions. I don't just roll over when I'm told to. Sad to say, most Americans just roll over on command. Not me. I have certain rules I live by. My first rule, I don't believe anything the government tells me. Nothing. Zero. Nope. And I don't take very seriously the media or the press in this country, who in the case of the Persian Gulf War were nothing more than unpaid employees of the Department of Defense, and who most of the time function as kind of an unofficial public relations agency for the United States government. So I don't listen to them. I don't get all choked up about yellow ribbons and American flags. I consider them to be symbols, and I leave symbols to the symbol-minded.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow. Friendships to flourish with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs and artillery batteries not included.
No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, no fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio, American Freedom Radio. Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything. Geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City. Your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Porkins Policy Radio. I am your host, Pierce Redmond. If you are joining us right now, we are with our good friend Jeffrey Augustine, who's, of course, the host of Surviving Scientology Radio. And you can find all of his work over at Scientology Money Project. And, of course, these will all be linked up in the show notes. And Jeffrey, I kind of interrupted you as we were coming up on the end of the break, but please do kind of continue where you were going. You're talking about again, Marty Rathbun and Mike Rinder, who were the number 2 and 3, respectively, in Scientology when they left, and kind of finish up what you were saying there. And I've got some other sort of questions related to that I wanted to get to.
Sure. Well, I've been an online critic of the Church of Scientology since 2005, when I started posting at xenu.net. It's Andreas Haldalen's fabulous site.
Yes.
Under the name of Jay Swift. Now, when the church was trying to castigate and impugn, slander Mike and Marty, I used the Wayback Machine to retrieve the pages that the church itself had put up on Mike and Marty, showing them to be high ecclesiastical officials within the church. And so really, since 2005, and you go earlier, but let's just start with 2005 when Tom Cruise jumped the couch.
Sure.
And then he went on the attack with Matt Lauer, against psych drugs and things. The internet has been the most effective medium, and really going even back to the BBS days and what's called alt-religion Scientology, where the great critics like Jerry Armstrong, Arnie Lerma, Dennis Ehrlich, and so on. The internet's been a very effective weapon to expose the machinations, the dishonesty, and the lies of the Church of Scientology. The internet has been the Church of Scientology's most profound problem, because we can have sites like Tony Ortega's blog, ESMB, xenu.net, so many other wonderful sites where people can share their experience. It helps them heal. It helps them expose the church. Because inside the church, everything's compartmentalized, Pierce. You as a Scientologist are not allowed to natter, what's called natter. You can't even talk to your own spouse about what's going on in your auditing case. So you're getting auditing, you can't talk to your own spouse, and you certainly can't say anything negative about the Church of Scientology or its leaders, or you're subjected to harsh ethics up to and including expulsion as an SP. So this is a mind control milieu. They do want to police your thinking. That's why Scientology has what are called sec checks. So if I were a Scientology executive and I decided you as Pierce, I got a knowledge report that another Scientologist has written on you, that you made a critical remark about David Miscavige, I would haul you into ethics, into a sec check, and that might go on for days, where we wanted to find out your hidden crimes against Scientology. So instead of you having a legitimate complaint that, hey, look, I'm being bankrupted by this constant demand for money, it would be, Pierce, why are you trying to destroy the Scientology religion? Why are you trying to destroy David Miscavige? So it's turned around on you constantly, this culture of interrogation. If you were a Sea Org member, you could be put into the Religious Rehabilitation Force, RPF. That's only for Sea Org members. And so there's a lot of punishments that can be handed out. And in context of the First Amendment, there's a 1976 court case called Serbian Eastern Orthodox Diocese, etc., versus Milosevic. And in that case, the court stated, quote, the First and 14th Amendments permit hierarchical religious organizations to establish their own rules and regulations for internal discipline and government, and to create tribunals for adjudicating disputes over these matters. When this choice is exercised, and ecclesiastical tribunals are created to decide disputes over the government and direction of subordinate bodies, the Constitution requires that civil courts accept their decisions as binding upon them, unquote. So basically, by law, churches are allowed to create their own internal justice systems. And they can be very arbitrary, punitive, and harsh, but the court accepts them as binding upon, binding. So you're kind of trapped because, why? You've consented on those initial contracts to be governed by this. You're trapped by the Constitution. Now, on our last interview, did we go over the case of Marion Gwynn? And what happened to her?
I don't believe so. No. Please go ahead.
Okay, this is an interesting case because we're going to get into what can happen to you in Scientology or other cult settings and how you can get out of it. But basically in '84, there's a famous court case. It's called Gwynn versus the Church of Christ at Collinsville. And this happened out in Oklahoma. And by the way, I just want to clarify, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving legal advice. If you're in a situation, you need to get a lawyer and get legal advice. Okay? Now, basically, Marion Gwynn was a woman. She joined the Church of Christ in '74 in Collinsville, Oklahoma. And this is the buckle of the Bible Belt. A lot of the local town people belong to the church. And so Marion Gwynn went along with the Church of Christ. A couple of years into her participation in the church, she started dating a divorced man who was the mayor of the town. And she started having an affair with him, which is adultery, right? And the church elders demanded a meeting with her, and they told her to stop sleeping with the mayor. And so she promised to repent, and that would seem to put an end to it, right? But in the Church of Christ, they demanded that she appear before the entire church membership and publicly confess the sin of fornication. And Pierce, you can imagine that could ruin a person in a small town in Oklahoma. She's suddenly the scarlet woman, right? And she stopped attending the church. She said, no, I'm not going to do it. So the elders, they drive to her house, a third confrontation, and they demand that she publicly confess her sin before the congregation. And they even sent her a letter saying they were going to do it if she didn't do it, and she would be kicked out of the church. So what happened, and this is so crucial, when Marion Gwynn, this happened, she got legal advice from a lawyer. Her lawyer said, 1, do not discuss my client's private life with the congregation. 2, she's leaving the church and she's rescinding or withdrawing her consent to be governed by its rules. And this is really important. If you want to get out of a bad church like Scientology or a bad cult, you need to put in writing that you're withdrawing your consent to be governed by its rules. Because the consent belongs to the member and not to the church. And that is so crucial because this is all based on your consent. And if you went out, you put it in writing to the church leaders, email, registered letter, to several, levels of leadership, to the head guy, to the local, to the regional. And in court, what happened, a few days after she sent the letter, the elders ignored her lawyer's request and her request for privacy, and they informed the congregation of the affair she had with the mayor. And they actually asked members to contact her and ask her to repent. And then they broadcast it to other congregations in the area. So all of Oklahoma knows she's a woman taken in sin. Well, this is horrible for her. So she sued for invasion of privacy and emotional distress. And the church tried to argue that its rules don't permit members to ever resign. It's like the Hotel California. Check in anytime you want, you never leave. But that's not true. In the United States, the privilege belongs to you of consent. And once you resign, the church, it can shun you, certainly. It can do a lot of nasty things, but you're no longer under its governance or control. And the court in Gwynn ruled in her favor. A jury awarded her $390,000 for invasion of privacy, emotional distress. The court said this, quote, just as freedom to worship is protected by the First Amendment, so also is the liberty to recede from one's religious alliance. In Turcaso versus Watkins, the court reaffirmed that neither a state nor the federal government can force or influence a person to go or to remain away from church against one's will to profess a belief or disbelief in their religion. The First Amendment clearly safeguards the freedom to worship as well as the freedom not to worship, unquote. So basically, so much of what Scientology can do to a person is completely avoidable by not signing its contracts, by not choosing to participate. Or if a person does want some Scientology, they should clearly read everything, ask for copies of the documents. Because so many Scientologists have told me they don't have copies of these contracts. And when trouble comes up, they've got to get a lawyer and try to get these copies, or the church asserts these contracts against them. So it's sort of like, I'm not opposed to anyone joining the Church of Scientology or the church, the Catholic Church or anything. This is a free country, right? But I'm saying, know what you're getting into. And I think that's what happens is there's not informed consent in the Church of Scientology at all, because the church really doesn't have like a seminar. Like a lot of Christian churches have seminars for new members where they outline the duties and obligations, and they outlaw potential penalties and, what could happen if you do this and what the church discipline is. Scientology doesn't do this. It's sort of a get in way over your head and take your money. And before you know it, you could be deeply in debt and not have any rights. In fact, your children could disconnect from you. So, as a civil libertarian, if you want to smoke cigarettes. I just don't want to pay for your medical treatment. You get lung cancer. Right. But religion is different, and that's one thing that makes Sharia law in Islam in America, it's not the law of the land as much as Islam would like it to be, but within an Islamic fellowship it would be, and the same applies to the Catholic Church, to Scientology, and everything else. So Scientology is probably just more vicious and aberrated and vindictive than other churches.
Well, and of course that's why, no Scientologist is going to let you in on if you disagree with this, then we'll send you to RPF, which is essentially a prison camp, or that will make you disconnect from your children, will make your children disconnect from you. We can, those are all things that would dissuade people from joining an organization, even one that's offering as much amazing stuff as Scientology is.
Yeah, and it's good. And just to clarify again, the Sea Org, they're the only ones who can be sent to the RPF.
Right. No. Yes. Correct.
Yeah. But I just want to make sure that because the Church of Scientology will obviously listen to this interview, and if you make a mistake, they tend to punish you if you make mistakes in details. And there is a department in the church called the Office of Special Affairs that's charged with monitoring all, what they perceive to be anti-Scientology activities online, on the radio, on television. So,
I know for sure that they've listened to our last show, and I've had weird. I think I mentioned in the last episode I had a strange little tweet back and forth with Scientology London. And I'm sure someone as prominent as you, they're definitely listening. Before the break, Jeffrey, we were talking about this concept of trademarks and like Hubbard's name is a trademark. All of these, the term Scientology, if you're kicked out, you can't say certain things because it's a trademark. And you told me an interesting story a couple weeks back. We were talking about a man you knew who was kicked out because during an auditing session, he sort of spilled the beans, so to speak, on OT data. And this was in a dream. And I believe it was like a dream he had where he met aliens or something to that nature. But that sort of reminded me again of this like idea of sort of revealing trademark stuff, and talk a little bit about that, because that kind of illustrates the extreme version of this fear of trademark stuff getting out there. Explain a little bit about that.
Sure. Just by way of background, though, the OT levels, it's an interesting story, and let me digress for a few minutes. The OT levels were originally taken from Scientology's Copenhagen organization by former members who dressed in Sea Org outfits, and they claimed to be high-level Sea Org executives who were on an inspection tour. And they demanded to see the org's OT materials, and then they took them and they wound up on the internet. And that was, the lawsuit with Arnie Lerma, who spent $1 million fighting them in court over this, right? So the church is protective of the trade secrets. And it's really odd, Pierce, that a religion would have trade secrets, because that suggests it's a business and not a religion at all. Because the Bible's certainly not a trade secret. Nevertheless, when you get onto the OT levels, legally, it's real interesting because you have to sign bonds. And OTs are subject to penalties of $100,000 per violation if they disclose any OT data. And so there's a financial penalty that's in contract, and it's enforceable. And that's the point I want to make. You can argue that these contracts are contracts of adhesion, but whether a court accepts it, probably not. I don't know that courts have ever thrown out a Scientology contract. So OT, which means operating Thetan. Thetan is Scientology's word for the spirit. In Mr. Hubbard's Gnostic conception, you gain the powers you lost. When you throttled down into the physical universe and took on a body, right? So Hubbard saw existence as you fell from your highest state down into the world of flesh and the material universe and all of its appetites and errors, right? So the OT levels seek to rehabilitate those powers that you once had. And that would be, going exterior out of your body and being able to read books from great distances and remote viewing, all kinds of claimed abilities looking at. So they don't want people to know the secret of working with body thetans and, all this auditing body thetans and Xenu and all that. So the OT data is always protected. When you go into a Scientology org, there's only advanced organizations or the flagship, the free ones, where you can get this done. The custody of the documents is very important. You usually have to carry them in a briefcase with you. Up on the ship, the free ones, the OT materials, you unplug them in a briefcase from a wall. It's plugged in, and you go through doors, and there's a high level of document security, as if they were, high-level defense, U.S. defense documents or something. And so this fellow was at Flag Land Base in Clearwater, Florida. And that's what they call their Mecca of technical perfection. And I'm sorry if your listeners, basically Flag Land Base is Scientology's big series of churches in Clearwater, Florida. And you go there for upper level or advanced services. So we knew a fellow who went there, and he had a dream. And his dreaming, so this alien shows up and asks if he has the materials. And he said yes. And that's the dream. It's almost like, remember when, was it Dan Rather who was assaulted, where the guy asked him, what's the frequency, Kenneth?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Okay, well, I believe it was Dan Rather. He was assaulted in D.C. in the 80s, and his assailant said, what's the frequency, Kenneth? It's a very perplexing story, but nevertheless, it reminded me of that. So, except it was nonviolent. So this guy, mentions that to his auditor, that an alien contacted him, asked if he had the materials. It just came up in a dream. And Scientology was very concerned, and they called him in, for special auditing, a sec check, and they wanted to know, did he give the alien the materials, eating the OT materials, which he didn't. But immediately they disqualified him and kicked him off the base. I think they gave him an hour to leave. Get out of here. Get off the base. So they're so paranoid that if you had a dream or a reverie with a discarnate entity, that could be a massive security violation. And it kind of speaks to the paranoid nature, because when you're up on the OT levels, there's a lot of strict rules. In Scientology, you're not allowed to engage in what are called other practices. So if you were a practicing Scientologist, especially on the upper levels, you couldn't do yoga, for example. That would be another practice. You couldn't, practice your Judaism or Christianity or Islamic faith. You're expected to give it all up. And even to get on to the OT levels, you have to be invited. And that means you have to prove to the church by donating for IAS statuses, by doing volunteer work, that you can get OT eligibility. It's not given out casually. And that's another thing. You have a great amount of hope as a Scientologist to get up on the OT levels and to go all the way to OT8. So you have to make the money that's required to do it, but you also have to do projects and volunteer work to get OT eligibility for OT3, and then, again at OT7 and especially OT8. And when you go to the ship on OT8, hoping to get your OT eligibility, at night when you're sleeping, they slip this, gilded invitation under your door, and you feel like the heavens have opened to you because you're invited onto OT8. So this
and OT8, it is an OT8 basically preparing you for like OT9.
Well, allegedly, OT9 and 10. David Miscavige in the 90s talked about OT9 and 10, and those two levels have never been released. And Miscavige is these days saying they're close to being released, but he said that back in the 90s. Scientology always has reasons why it can't do anything. It used to say that OT 9 and 10 can't be released until all of the orgs are old St. Hill sites, which meant the size of the St. Hill organization L. Ron Hubbard ran back in the 60s.
Yeah.
And so
which is near impossible.
Yeah, it's near impossible. And then they'll always had like the superpower building, what it was called, took the better part of 20 years to open. That's that big, it's a square block facility now. It's called the Flag Building in Clearwater, Florida. And it's a glorified office building. If I were a developer, it might take 18 months to open a building like that, maybe 24 months. But these guys just milked it to raise money forever. And they didn't open it, and they were fined for not opening it, year after year after year. They can't open it. So with Scientology, you never look at what they're saying. You have to really look at what's actually going on. And then you look at statements of former members who have left for information. And this, again, is why the Internet is so powerful, because people who were in the Sea Org, who were in management, can talk about what's really going on. And now the church is really trying to clamp down on people leaving by getting them to sign gag agreements, non-disclosure agreements, especially Sea Org members, because the revelations have been so damaging to the church of what actually happens that they now use a series of contracts, and I've heard they're even using, they're even paying people settlements as they leave the church not to talk out, to stay gagged. So I'm just saying their problem in an internet age. How does a secretive cult stay secretive?
Yeah, definitely. And and of course, anyone that does even a cursory sort of research into Scientology will know they just, I don't think they were ready for the internet and what that posed. And obviously there are definitely cults out there that love the internet and utilize the internet, and cults that sort of operate mainly online. but Scientology is not one of them, and they don't really seem to know how to counter that. You know, I mean, their sort of basic countering with the internet is to buy up domain names that are similar to anti-Scientology or sites that are critical of Scientology, and you know they'll take a name and instead of .com it'll say .org or .net or something, you know, hoping that people will get tricked into going there and reading about how wonderful Scientology really is. I know that was happening recently with the Billboard projects that were going on in Los Angeles,
exactly,
which was a. No, go ahead, Jeffrey. You can say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, the Stop Disconnection billboards. Now, Pierce, just as an experiment, I put Google up and I entered Scientology. Scientology normally buys ads, you know, on Google, paid ads to get to the front page. But right now I'm looking at Scientology beliefs. It's not easy being Scientology, and it's from RichardDawkins.net, a paid ad from RichardDawkins.net. And then I'm seeing Wikipedia. Then I'm seeing Scientology.org, which is the official site. Scientology Wikipedia. Then they have in the news Louis Theroux's Scientology movie getting coverage. Last night, Tony Ortega covered this today, which is October 11th. Piers Morgan last night challenged Scientologists to come on his show and called them sinister little weirdos live on TV.
Okay, well, I guess, Piers Morgan has some balls again.
Sinister little weirdos. Now, let's continue on. After that, there's Operation Clambake, which is UNU.net, and then there's the Scientology site. Then we have Inside Scientology by Rolling Stone. Next is Vanity Fair, Scientology, Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes, what Katie Holmes didn't know. The New Yorker, Paul Haggis versus Scientology. And then there's Twitter, Scientology Thriving, Color, Greed, and Power, Scientology Newsroom, Scientology Facebook. So Scientology has about half the sites. Now, I shouldn't say this, because I don't like Scientology's Office of Special Affairs to know what I'm doing. But Piers, are you at your computer?
Yes.
Okay, for your listeners, let's all do this as an exercise to humor me. Type in Scientology money. And see, the reason I picked the name of my blog, Scientology Money Project, is I wanted to get uncontested search space. And if you know how to blog and you know how to tag with your keywords, what are you getting on Scientology money?
I'm getting 3 down as your website. First is Scientology as a business, Wikipedia. Then it's a Fortune article talking about Scientology's tax-exempt status. And then it's the Scientology Money Project. And then a couple articles by you.
And I'm quoted in that Fortune magazine. I'm getting Wikipedia, Scientology as a business, the Money Project, and then another Money Project, Fortune, where I'm quoted, Scientology myths. So what I would recommend to people, if they want to expose Scientology, get a unique term that has Scientology, but another term where you can get uncontested, Google space. So when Scientology money comes up, I come up high in the results. And I did that because if I just used Scientology, I couldn't compete. And that was just part of my strategy. You know, I have a satire blog called otisgreat.com. And as an experiment, I tagged everything with Captain David Miscavige. I also tagged COBRTC David Miscavige. And for a while, I owned those search terms on page 1 of Google. And so what's really funny is that the war is for the front page of Google, and Scientology has to spend a lot of money fighting it. And like if you type in COBRTC David Miscavige, the Money Project will come up, and then my satire blog will come up. And so I own the first 3. So what activists, very clever activists, have done, they've taken it to Twitter. Like Leah Remini is very active on Twitter, and she's very effective. Other people are very active on Twitter and very effective. So it's gone to Google, Twitter, Facebook. Instagram. And what's interesting is Scientology is even trying to put little ads on Craigslist. And there's a group of activists fighting them on Craigslist. So they'll put on these innocuous Craigslist ads. Do you have problems in relationships? Do you have problems in money? So this is an interesting cultural thing to watch, Scientology trying to sell its brand despite all the negative publicity it's gained. And the obvious question, Pierce, is why doesn't the Church of Scientology reform, stop the human rights abuses, and then therefore stop all the criticism? Well, it can't because it's bound to what Hubbard wrote, and he died in 1986. So it's working in a very counterproductive, self-destructive way. It's doing things that harm people. It's bankrupting people. It's harming people spiritually. It's harming them financially. It's breaking up families because this is its operating procedure on a scriptural basis, so it can't change. But on the other hand, it wants to present itself as some humanitarian group that can help the world. And as you pointed out, that's why it's caught in so many contradictions. That's why it has to have these contracts. That's why it tries to have gag agreements where former members, Sea Org Republics can't talk about it. And it's not a very tenable situation for Scientology to be in. The latest reports are that its membership continues to decline, maybe down to around 25 to 20,000 people globally, and its income continues to decline. So, from where you sat, what do you see as Scientology's key problems? If I can ask you a question.
Well, I mean, I think, as you said, first and foremost is just the declining membership, and ultimately the fact that it is so destructive. I think that's an important thing you were saying. I think the biggest problem, or one of the biggest problems, is that they are bound to Hubbard, who's, for all intents and purposes, more or less a complete psycho, manipulative, narcissistic person that built this cult around his psychotic behavior, and that's what they're trying to sell to people. And ultimately, this just doesn't fly with most people, I think, after a while. And they're also their inability to control. They can no longer control their image the way they did even 15 years ago, even 10 years ago. Now it seems as if the gloves are off, and everybody is willing to kind of come out and talk about how destructive this group has become, and they can't control that anymore. As witnessed by, the countless people you've had on your show, all exposing the insanity inside and outside the church. So I think that those are the big problems they're facing.
Yeah, that's well said, and that's one reason I started this Surviving Scientology radio, is simply to have former executives in the Sea Org talk about their experiences inside Sea Org management and what they did and what happened. I wanted to do a project where I was building an oral history. And I regret very much not being able to interview Stephen Fauf, who died recently, who was there at the Creston, California ranch when L. Ron Hubbard died. And but I'm still working to interview key people. And information is power, and the power you and I have, as regular people, is to communicate, to get onto the internet and communicate. And I think the overwhelming evidence against Scientology is insurmountable for that organization. And the Money Project is my attempt to unravel the financial and legal labyrinth of the church, to make it understandable to people that this is how the church really operates. Because when you look at a typical Scientology ad or commercial, it's a smiling face, and it's talking about how Scientology helped them. It doesn't talk about the $360,000 price to get to get up the bridge to OT8. And it's more than that, but $360,000 is a ballpark number that's widely used. I did a post recently on Scientology, it's what are called social betterment groups. These are like the Way to Happiness Foundation, the Drug Free World Foundation. Scientology has a series of social betterment front groups that try to spread PR, like the volunteer ministers.
Yep.
And it's funny in terms of recurring images. What Scientology is trying to do to build good PR is they have a booklet called The Way to Happiness. And it's something L. Ron Hubbard wrote in the early 80s. It's supposed to be his version of the Ten Commandments. Like, it's pablum. It's like, I forget what it is, 20 steps to easy living,
Yeah.
And they hand these books out. So the most widely used image you'll see from Scientology is smiling people holding copies of The Way to Happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't communicate to have groups of people holding little booklets. And then they might have people holding their anti-drug booklets. And then they have pictures of smiling policemen holding copies of the anti-drug booklets. And Scientology has wildly claimed that just the mass distribution of The Way to Happiness has reduced crime in Colombia by 70%, that it's pacified nations and populations. So they make these really absurd claims. Especially the Colombia one interested me when they made it several years ago about reducing crime 70%. They failed to mention that the Colombian military, the U.S. military, got real serious about the cartels operating in Colombia. And, the government was real serious about ending all the murders and the rampage. So these simplistic formulas are breaking down under critical scrutiny. And what I'm seeing right now is Scientology really trying to embed itself with police departments in the United States by using their anti-drug literature from what's called Drug Free World. And they're trying to get pictures of policemen with Scientology officials. And most recently we saw this with the Nation of Islam, and had a big meeting at the Scientology Community Center in Inglewood, California. And they claim that there they helped broker a historic peace between the warring gangs in South Central Los Angeles by passing out The Way to Happiness. Now that's a vast overstatement, because if handing out The Way to Happiness solved crime in Colombia, brought peace to South Central, then you wouldn't need the Scientology bridge. You wouldn't need the $360,000 OT cure. You would simply hand out this book. So as a critic, when you begin to take apart what they're doing and saying, it breaks down under scrutiny. Especially their front groups. Their one big trouble front group, of course, is Narconon, the drug treatment program that uses...
It's come under increasing pressure.
It's lawsuits, pressure. Narconon is becoming the first big failure legally and in terms of PR for the Church of Scientology. That's where they're most at risk. There's wrongful death lawsuits, fraud lawsuits. And so Narconon is probably the weakest part of the Scientology organization right now, overall organization. And but that is what I'm seeing, going back to what I said, Scientology trying to embed itself with police departments. And some police departments, are tasked with anti-drug education in their community. And Scientology sort of gives them a simplistic and often pseudoscientific plug-and-play series of booklets, educational things, and that allows police departments to check off drug education on their to-do list, right? And they often donate money. With LAPD, they donate money. I have a picture up in one of my posts of them donating $20,000 to the Celebrity Center. So sometimes they grease the wheels. Several years ago, 2006, 2007, they got in trouble with the City of London for treating police officers to lavish dinners and entertainment, meetings with Tom Cruise, to try to do what's called safe pointing themselves. Safe pointing is a Scientology term meaning gain area PR control. And Scientology has been pretty effective at working within the Los Angeles Police Department. I would say that's one area where they have a presence. And, but again, these things can be covered, and you see them for what they're. They're obviously PR ploys to distract off the human rights abuses. Pierce, what I find most aggravating is Scientology is trying to oppose human trafficking, even though they have a slave labor force called the Sea Org, and they're trying to assert human rights.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that one of the most hypocritical things they do, because given our discussion, not only do they strip their own members of all their legal rights and human rights, but then they turn around and try to say they're the greatest champion of human rights in the world. And I would say if they do something that is completely hypocritical and dishonest, it's to champion human rights where they're the people who are destroying human rights in their own organization. And yet they continue to push this human rights thing.
Oh, and they've openly engaged in human trafficking in the sense that they kidnap people and move them to clandestine locations. And I believe that, there was this is going back a while, but when the FBI sort of got involved in what was going on at like Gold Base and at the what is the Scientology, the RPF prison, the famous one.
The SP hole.
The hole, yeah, exactly. That was all. The FBI's whole case was predicated on the notion of that this was a human trafficking, and of course, and for various reasons, that was sort of quietly dropped, and the FBI never pursued it. But I mean, they openly engage in that. Yet, of course, as you said, that's become a big thing with the human rights, and Scientology is cozied up to the United Nations when it comes to human rights, and they have a front group that is very active, trying to curry favor, or at least to try and present this image that they're this human rights loving group to the United Nations, and sometimes removing itself. No, we're just this human rights group, that's secretly being funded by Scientology, which is sort of how a lot of, Narconon and some of those other things, those are all ways of introducing people to Scientology without using Scientology initially.
Sure. And that's an important point. Yeah,
well, exactly. I was going to say, nobody gets into Narconon, and think, I'm into Scientology. They get into it to get off drugs. And of course, when you're trying to detox, you're in a very, suggestible position. And, it's very, I think it can be easier to then suggest to people, you should check out Dianetics. You might get something else out of this. And that's how of course, that's how when Scientology took over the cult awareness, network. Again, the exact same thing. They were using an anti-cult group to basically recruit more people into Scientology. And there's a host of them. There's here in New York there was the New York Rescue Workers Detoxification program, which was a front set up by Tom Cruise to help rescue workers after 9/11. And they went through a purification rundown and all this other stuff, and then they were, of course, then told, given some Scientology literature, provided by Tom Cruise. So, these groups are, as you said, I think they're becoming more widespread. And it's interesting too to note the relationship Scientology is sort of creating more and more with the police. You're talking about the LAPD is, of course, obviously very friendly with Scientology, and they were, talking about human trafficking. You have Leah Remini issuing a missing persons report for Shelley Miscavige, who hasn't been seen in years, and supposedly the LAPD visited her out where God only knows where she is, and said that she was totally fine. So again, these relationships are very, I think cozying up to the police is, of course, very beneficial to Scientology, because this can get them out of all sorts of little issues that might, arise. And, I think it's good for any cult or group like that, if you can get law enforcement on your side, then you can get away with a hell of a lot. So,
Sure,
that's another thing. No, jump in, Jeffrey.
Well, I was going to say, to be fair to the LAPD and law enforcement in general, police departments have a lot of different constituencies. And in community policing, you want to be on good terms with all your various constituencies. So I don't have anything against LAPD having a relationship with the Church of Scientology, because that's one of their constituencies. The LAPD has outreaches to a lot of religious groups, civic groups for help. And what I have a problem with is the LAPD using Scientology anti-drug literature, handing it out. That's a possible violation of First Amendment. A police department paid for with tax dollars preferentially handing out Scientology anti-drug literature. And that's a matter of concern to me that I want to raise with the local authorities, because that's showing preference for one group's anti-drug literature. And it really is a covert recruiting method for Scientology. So it has a bad odor to it. Police departments should avoid the appearance of impropriety. And when you're preferentially handing out Scientology anti-drug literature, you are tacitly promoting a religious group, which you're not allowed to do. And maybe we can do another program sometime. We're on LAPD, because this goes way back. But there are methods of using the police, or there's even some photos there use the Colombian military, wherever they can get into. And they try to, Scientology is so good at the theft of symbols, powerful symbols. This began when L. Ron Hubbard stole the Christian cross and used it for Scientology. This is the theft of a potent religious symbol to imbue Scientology with a sense of religiosity, and even, a sense that it's been around a long time, because the cross has been around for 2,000 years as a symbol. So they're very adept at stealing symbols, crosses, pictures of police officers, pictures. There's a volunteer minister picture where two young men are carrying a stretcher out of a military helicopter. And when Tom Cruise was going through his times of trouble, following, Matt Lauer and Oprah Winfrey, he did something really interesting, Pierce. He did an interview with Diane Sawyer, but he did it in his hangar, which I believe is Van Nuys Airport. It might be Burbank. But Tom Cruise owns two P-51 fighters. I don't know if you know that.
No.
And what he did is he did the interview in his hangar with his P-51 Mustang fighter from World War II behind him. And for a lot of older Americans, the P-51, was the plane that conquered the Luftwaffe in World War II. It was a fighter that took down the Luftwaffe, right? So it's a very potent symbol. And his publicist certainly had to be aware of doing the interview with the P-51 sitting there. Because, and really anyone at that point over 50 years old knows that plane. And a lot of younger people do from video games. And the message implied there was, he can't be a really bad guy if he loves the P-51. And then, of course, John Travolta, has several jet aircraft, and he likes to be photographed in his airplanes. He flew down in one of his airplanes after the big Haiti earthquake, and prominently pulled some strings to get landing rights because it was so crowded going in there with aid. And when you look at Scientology pictures, what you want to look at is, are they stealing potent symbols for their own use? And the fact that they, over time, have started calling their Scientology orgs churches more and more, they're trying to call it churches instead of orgs. That's been one of their PR drifts. You've seen them calling themselves a church more and more. And it's almost like a ship is sinking and they're trying to counterflood to right the ship by using these front groups these PR opportunities. They're volunteer ministers, for example, the people that wear the yellow jackets and the yellow T-shirts. Whenever there's a disaster, they raise money and try to fly in Scientology volunteer ministers for photo ops.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
the
highly
earthquake
offensive.
in Nepal.
In any event, the Virginia Tech shooting, what was really offensive and insensitive, the bodies were still on the ground. The police investigation was really taking place. And they pitched a volunteer minister's tent on the campus of Virginia Tech. And I publicized it saying that this is religious obscenity. You're literally walking over the backs of the dead to get PR opportunities. When Whitney Houston died, John Travolta said Scientology could have saved her. I thought, oh, that's cynical. And then one of their front groups, I think CCHR, Citizens Commission for Human Rights, they're the anti-psychiatry group, anti-psychiatry drugs. They actually raised money saying, Whitney Houston died, you should give us money to help. Because, Whitney Houston used drugs. And maybe if we had gotten to her, she wouldn't have died. So they're disaster capitalists in that sense. They're trying to raise money when there's a disaster, and they're trying to position themselves. There's one particularly offensive photo that I'll send you for show notes. Right after 9/11, and this I found so offensive, Pierce. It's a group of people, rescue workers, first responders in the rubble of 9/11. Mm-hmm. And there's one Scientology volunteer minister in a yellow shirt. So what does the church do? It makes the entire picture black and white, except for the Scientology volunteer minister who's in color, as if he were the only one there at ground zero making a difference. And when you really get into what they're doing, it's very cynical, because the church doesn't even pay volunteer ministers. They make them raise money. So there's been a lot of leaked emails of, hey, earthquake in Nepal, we need money to fly a group of volunteer ministers there. But what they don't tell you are they have billions of dollars and they could just pay to make it happen. They don't donate money. They just send a camera crew there from their Scientology Gold Base. So if they were honest, they would say, look, we're going to go there and make a gesture of charity, but we're going to have a camera crew there filming the whole thing, and then we're going to use it to show what great humanitarians we are while also raising money. So Scientology is so damn cynical that way. Mm-hmm. And when you've been watching them long term, like I have and so many other good critics, you see their cynical patterns at work every day. But they don't apologize for it. They just keep doing it. And one wonders if they're subscribing to the great big lie theory of propaganda that if you repeat a lie long enough, people believe it. I mean, that
seems to be how they've been working all these years, and I think finally people are starting to kind of wake up. Now it's very in vogue to be a critic of Scientology, whereas even 10 years ago it was much more of a taboo subject. But now of course it's so much has sort of come out on that. Jeffrey, we're kind of running up on the end, and just please again tell everybody where they can go to read your work, to listen to your radio show, anything about you.
Well, first of all, my wife Karen Della Carriere, former Class 12 supervisor, trained by L. Ron Hubbard on the flagship Apollo. She has a YouTube channel called Surviving Scientology. So you can see my wife Karen's work on Surviving Scientology on YouTube. My work is survivingscientologyradio.com. I'm available on iTunes. And also at the ScientologyMoneyProject.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jeffrey, and I know we'll have you back on to get into some more stuff, because we just scratched the surface. But thank you again.
Oh, great to be on, Pierce. Always love it.
News and information you can trust. This is American Freedom Radio. Freedom, American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.